Hi guys, Mr. Jaeger here, and welcome back to Star Citizen IAE. It is that day, that motherfucking day. It is Industrial Day. Yes, get me the fuck up there. Yes, it is this day, the day of Industrial, the day of Argo, and a few other little things on the side. But Argo, Arg. Avast ye industrial dogs, for we be crafting all, and melting all, and transporting all into usable, refinable materials to collect into the Intergalactic Center. Yarg. Yes, today is my favorite day of the entire event, where we get to talk about Argo, my favorite ship manufacturer, alongside some of the most awesome ships in Star Citizen. However many, and this will undoubtedly reveal to you just how much of a sad sack of shit I am. So without further ado, let's fucking go. So let's begin our day with our two little favorite ships, which I look very forward to seeing a lot more in action for. These are, of course, the MPUVs, which are basically just multi-purpose utility vehicle. I think that's the actual official name of them. And what they are simply little, well, they are multi-purpose utility vehicles. These particular things have a hook or a pod-like option. Basically, you see, I can't seem to find the right words to describe it. But basically, these ships have, you know the Lat-V from Star Wars, which dropped off the walker tanks, the ATTE walker tanks from the Clone Wars? Basically that. The Lat-Vs that would drop the tanks off and roll off into the field. Instead of dropping these things to their horrible demise, which obviously would be a bad case, this particular version is the personnel carrier. Think of it like a budget bus. You've got a bunch of people... Ooh, bloody hell. I just zoomed across. You just imagine yourself in a situation where you're on one of these things, you're being transported, and you're like, you know what, this is my way of getting from A to B on planet side, which is fair enough. So it's a bit cramped, obviously, and as you can see, not the most stable, but still, it is a very nice looking option, which again, depending on the kind of transportation we're doing, we're either going to be transporting you in and around a station or in and around a facility. These things do not have a quantum drive, as you can imagine, due to their size. But what they do have is a really awesome amount of cargo and utility or capabilities, which I do like. This one being the cargo edition. Let me just put the power on for this, because I think we need to get the power into this thing, because it's all dark. There we go. So, in terms of view, you're not really getting a huge amount of view. But again, this vehicle is designed for just simply getting you from A to B. And then if we hop into here, now we have some lights. You can see it's like a nice little tiny cargo space. There's a little chair for you to be in. So, again, it's designed for one specific purpose, which is to be useful. And it does it looking so nice. It also has, I believe, VTOL thrusters. Or not? No, they're not VTOL thrusters. I do apologize. They're just normal thrusters. Okay. For some reason, I used to have it in my head that they were VTOL, but no, they're not. They're just normal thrusters. Why I ever thought that? Anyway, so these things are really quite adorable, and they have a very... I mean, again, they are... You don't see them too much at the moment, but what you will be seeing in the future, once the cargo refactor becomes a thing, is definitely a larger use of these things, which is really quite cool. And who knows, maybe there'll be clans that'll form up to be cargo loaders. I won't lie, I'd be tempted to sign up for one myself, because that's how sad I am. To be fair though, having witnessed the trucking community, like in Euro Truck Simulator, Euro Train Simulator, the Train Simulator lot, and the Foxhole Logistics community, of which I am a member. Yeah, no, there's more of us. There's enough of us. So, for the next series of ships, which are not really industrial, we have, of course, the Kruger series of vessels, the only Kruger ships in Star Citizen at the moment. The P-52 and the P-72 Archimedes. Now, one side note, I do kind of wonder why these ships are available, on display, in an environment that does not actually feature them a lot. These particular vessels are either available as separate purchases or as part of a snub fighter addition to the Constellation series. Logically speaking, at least if I was trying to add some, make some sense when it comes to the specific vehicles, I would have put them with the, with RSI. Now, I realize that RSI is in of itself quite a large amount of ship manufacturers, so there may be not enough room, and that's the reason why, maybe. But I also kind of feel like these two ships, just put out of context, don't really make a lot of sense. They don't have quantum drives, their armaments are very limited, and they only really serve as a last-ditch attempt to get away from a bad situation or a unique flyable option to take into a small environment to fly into, like a cave or something like that. But these vessels still have a pretty impressive... the thing is, aesthetically wise, I like them. And in terms of the weapons, primarily for the second one, I like the P-52 more. But I have to agree that the P-72 is probably better in terms of versatility. What do I mean? Well, basically, the P-52, as you can see, has two size 1 repeating laser, or has two size 1 laser repeaters, whereas the Archimedes has 4. So, obviously, therein lies a difference. But then there is an additional thing that you may have noticed, or not. Hello. Yeah, that thing. That's a size 2 Gatling gun. To be more specific, it is the Tiger Strike T-19P, size 2 ballistic Gatling gun. So obviously, therein lies the disadvantage. The Gatling gun in the middle of the P-52 is not interchangeable. You can't do anything with it, and unfortunately, it does have a very limited ammunition supply, only 295. Which does make it somewhat less applicable in terms of contact or combat, whereas the Archimedes T-72 does have more options. You have 4 mounting points which you can mount weapons on, giving you that extra edge in combat. None of these vessels have missiles, which is, again, a bit of a sad case, but these things are not really designed for heavy-duty combat. These are literally designed as a last-ditch effort to stop the inevitable, and if you're relying on a snub fighter to defend yourself, then obviously you've forgotten the weapons on the Connie of your choice that you're flying, unless you're flying the Phoenix edition. Now, the other thing to note is that you're more likely to see the P-52 on the Constellation series of ships rather than the P-72, since the P-72 is mostly available on the Phoenix edition of the Connie series, or the Snazzy Transport edition. In terms of views, these vehicles are pretty nice. I mean, in terms of cockpit views, they are pretty nice. And one thing I really do want to see is more vehicles from Kruger. Let's have a look. Ooh, there you go. Like, Kruger Intergalactic, or Kruger in general, has a, first of all, really good logo. Second of all, I would like to see more ships from Kruger. Like, I think, judging from the way they designed their ships and the internal computer systems, I would really like to see more ships come from Kruger, because I do believe that they have quite a lot of potential to show, and it's a real shame that they've only been able to really express themselves through a snub craft. But unfortunately, for the time being, this is all we'll get to enjoy. So, as we enter into the first and only room available outside, we are presented with a number of ships from Consolidated Outland, a rather interesting vessel-making company, because they are one of the few companies that have been able to strike a deal with the Xi'an and be able to manufacture ships utilizing Xi'an technology, which is pretty cool. Now, I personally find a number of their ships to be fairly insignificant, or at least not really interesting, with perhaps 1 or 2 exceptions. The first ship, though, or line of ships, and also you can tell this is an old style of design simply because there are so many variants of it. One thing I've noticed when it comes to old Star Citizen designs, such as the Freelancer, the Hornet, the Mustang, the Aurora, a lot of those ships have many different versions of themselves. And I think in future endeavors, I mean, to a degree, it's kind of there are some other ships that have multiple versions, such as, let's say, the Raft or the the Mole series of ships, where you've got like the Raft, and then now you've got the SRV. But the thing is, those particular versions are so different, even though they share the same platform, that they are still they all have their own independent swing. Whereas these particular variants are more or less the same thing with slight changes, minor tweaks, nothing overly impressive. And again, there's only one, and in the Mustang line especially, there's only one or two of these ships that has a distinctive, unique flair, which makes them at all interesting in the slightest. So, without further ado, the Mustang Alpha. This thing is the alternative option when you start looking into Star Citizen for the cheapest ship to purchase. It is a dedicated fighter platform with now supposedly functioning cargo bay stuff. There we go. So what happens now, at least, is this little door opens up and you can get inside it, though apparently you can close it now. But yeah, effectively what you can do is you can get into this ship. There's a cargo slot things on the back there, and you can put stuff inside of it, and you can have all these wonderful things. There we go. So as you can see, it's open, and then does this then come back up? Let's open you up, shall we? There we go. So as you can see, you can get inside this thing. There you go. And in you stay. And it's a reasonable amount of cargo space, so definitely an impressive foray of stuff, to say the least. But it's unfortunately has a main disadvantage in the sense that it doesn't have a bed. And it's while its weapon armaments are better, finger quote better, it's not got that much more of an impressive weapons capacity. I mean, the weapons you have on here are size 2 fixed on a remote or a nose turret style system M4As. So sure, these things are bigger and better, you have more firepower than the Aurora, but it has a horrible nose turret. It kind of just looks, in my opinion, and again this is my personal opinion, it just doesn't really, it just means that you're limited to that. It doesn't give you that extra layer of customization. And if you hop into the fighter seat as well, you don't have any place to put things in. Now, of course, you've got the cargo pod thing inside. That does give you finally some versatility, in the sense of if you are doing box missions, you can do that. But for example, you can't put your boxes into your ship, unlike, for example, the Aurora gear, which you can do. And while the Aurora, I believe, I think the Aurora has a similar style of cargo system, that instead of it being its own separate pod, it's basically you hook it to the back of the ship and there you go. Whereas this ship, you have to get a separate menu out and wait for it to load out. I won't deny, though, it has a fantastic field of view, like absolutely beautiful field of view with the cockpit. So big props to that. And also it does pass the MFD test, which I find is a big plus. So it's not that it's bad as an objective thing. It's just, for me, I just don't find this particular ship appealing. Never really found it anything to be more interesting than just bleh. And I think that's the only real description I can give of it. You do, however, have, for those who don't know, a couple of hard points you can mount some size 1 weapons to. So there is an option there, but they're only size 1 weapons you can work with. Whereas, sadly, you can't take this thing off, unlike a gimbal mount, and put a larger weapon on. If you could take this thing off and put a size 3 weapon on the front there, this ship becomes a lot better, in my opinion, and far more versatile and more applicable in that respect. But for the time being, it doesn't really have anything except bleh, in my opinion. But it is an alpha star. Well, it is one of the beginner ships you can work with. And weirdly enough, the beta version, which I feel like it's going to get a bad rep in the sense that it won't be used, it'll just get ignored, actually is better than the Mustang Alpha by one sheer simple factor. And I actually didn't realize this until this event. or at least I hadn't. I thought I was going crazy because for years I thought you couldn't get into the back of one of these things. It turns out you can, but you have to know where it is. And vaboom, you have a living accommodation inside a Mustang ship. Even has a shit shower. And no, I don't mean shit shower as in it's a terrible shower. I'm talking you have a shitter and a shower. Thus, the shit shower. And yeah, you've got a bed. It's there. It's utilitarian as hell, and I like it. This is good. This is big. This is very good. And I'm like, why wasn't this added as a fucking starter ship? Like, just get rid of the Mustang Alpha. Turn this into an Alpha, and then all you have is, fucking 1, 2, and 3. That Mustang Alpha is completely fucking pointless when... There's Lando Calrissian having a seizure of some sort. Anyway, the point is, this ship, because it's obviously not the Mustang Alpha, it's probably going to be slightly more expensive. Don't know why. It's the same ship, except you can now sleep in it. No different to a fucking Aurora. And it's just... I'd love to know why this ship... I'd love to know why this ship is ignored. Because, again, same prospect. It's got its cargo. You can fly around and do your thing. You also then have a living accommodation, which makes this vessel an applicable choice. It makes it so much better. I mean, what is it? Does it not have a cargo space? Does it remove the cargo space? If that's the case, then that is kind of surprising, considering there's a giant fucking backdrop area here. I mean, you can reduce the cargo space, so for instead of it being 6 SCU, it could be like, I don't know, 4 or whatever. Like... SCU as a cargo space. Doesn't have one as a Pathfinder. Okay, so this particular edition is the Pathfinder edition. But I'm like... Why?
It's not the best I've seen from this manufacturer.
Again, I would much prefer to have this thing be the starter ship than that thing. Because at least you have a bed, you can sleep in it, and more importantly, you could open up the canopy, and especially now with the tractor beam, you could put a box in there. And you could do that, and that would be fine. But no, of course not. That would be silly. Anyway, moving to the next vehicle, we have the Mustang Gamma, which is a dedicated racing craft, so it's all about going fast. You lose the nose turret, but you gain... Well, you don't gain anything, really. You use the size 1 mounts on the side to have weapons and defense. But again, this ship is designed not as a fighter, but a racer. So it will be going very, very fast, and I'm sure it could do pretty well in comparison to its counterparts. And finally, we have the dedicated combat variant, which is known as the Mustang Delta. This is probably the ultimate form of Mustang. It has the weapons systems. It has the same thing as before, and it has a few other things on the side. One of which, actually, you don't get on any other vessel in Star Citizen. So you've got the size 2 M4A2s, you've got size 2 Badger repeaters, and then you've got rocket pods. Yes, rocket pods. Now, sadly, these don't do huge amounts of damage. They only do 150, but there are 30 rounds of the max, so you have 60 rockets. No other ship in Star Citizen has rocket pods. I want rocket pods in Star Citizen because I feel like certain ships, even if you had to make it so that you can either choose between missiles and rocket pods, I reckon a lot of players would end up with rocket pods for their main armament. Because unguided at least means potentially useful. But also, it's really versatile. You can shoot ground vehicles, you can shoot space vehicles, you can shoot bases. I like rocket pods. I would love to see more rocket pods in Star Citizen. I'm not saying they need to be amazing, I just would like to see more of them in Star Citizen. But overall, the Mustang series of ships just feel bleh, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to shit on them because I don't like them, I don't personally find them very appealing. and I find that with the exceptions of the Mustang Beta and the Delta, there isn't really a specific reason for them to have so many variants, and I kind of just wish you'd have the Mustang Beta as the alpha option, so you can hop into it as your first ship, and the Mustang Delta as the fighter up-rigged edition, and the other editions can just be left to the wayside because they don't really serve any real purpose. But hey-ho, what do I know? So, as we leave the immensely indifferent versions of Mustang, we are presented with instead a... Wait, really? It's a No, there's no... I think that must be a typo because there's no way it's known as the Mustang Nomad. It's just the Nomad. I think there must be a bit of an issue there. Because it's also just known as the Nomad on the website. So I don't know why it's considered the Mustang Nomad unless they're just trying to pinch other ships to remain relevant. Not a very good success there. But still, this is, of course, the Nomad. This is Consolidated Outlands' attempt at a starter ship that actually does something more than just flies around. And it is unique in the sense that it not only has no landing gears, it instead has anti-grav landing skids, which, theoretically speaking, if I'm going under them, I should be immediately crushed or have my insides scrambled, because in the law of logic, surely anti-gravity, repulsor lift technology that allows skimmer-style landing pads to exist, surely a great amount of pressure or force must be being pushed down onto the planet, or to the surface that it's currently reverberating from, which as a result would cause the person or anyone underneath it to suffer immense forces of gravitational push. And also there's a reason why if you try to land on water, because there's no solid mass underneath, you go falling down. If you may recall Back to the Future had the same thing. So that's my current understanding. Any of you scientists out there, feel free to correct me or to agree, depending on whether or not I'm correct, in the comments section. So this particular ship has a rather unique way of landing. I have, not going to lie, if you've been flying any other ship and then you get onto this one, you will crump this thing a few times before you figure out how to do it properly, which also can result in you probably having a bad habit form if you've been landing with this ship first, then go to a ship with its own physical landing gear, because you're probably going to end up sort of putting the power off, and then all of a sudden your ship just goes, oh, poof, as you've been like about 2 or 3 foot from the ground, so not too good. Anyway, the other unique factor about this ship is the fact that its cargo bay is not so much a cargo bay, but a cargo slot or something. It's literally the pickup truck, as a lot of players have utilized that terminology for. This particular unique thing grants it the benefit of over 24 SCUs worth of cargo. And if you've got an ROC, which we'll be talking about later on, you can actually jerry drive this onto the vehicle, onto the Nomad itself, and fly with it on the back. You can't quantum with it, mind you, but you can fly with it with this extended, and you can go from one zone to the next, and it's actually quite a nice little cheesy but functional pickup style tow truck, which I quite like. But no, so this particular thing also has a tractor beam as well, which is very nice, so I am a big fan of that. Though with the introduction of tractor beams, I'm not too sure in the long run how applicable they will be. But having one, you have one, which is quite nice. So, and also one of the things that makes this ship rather cool, the Consolidated Outlander ships cool in general, is they were able to be one of the few companies that had signed a contract with the Xi'an Empire, resulting in, of course, very funky bits of technology being utilized, being able to be going and to be used, which is very, very nice. So, as you can see, we're living in very simple accommodations. There's the shitter, there's the wardrobe, and then you have a rather pleasant interior with what looks to be something cooking in the background over there. That looks to be, it is a microwave, straight up. So you have a microwave, you've got soy sauce, you've got an electric heater, you've got all the useful features that someone living on the living in the front is going to be. I always feel like that's probably a slight dig or a little bit of an in-joke. But of the 9 TNG, okay. But yes, as you can see, there's a number of options here. A big benefit is, of course, you have the bed, which allows you to get to sleep. And we have a very fancy pants door access button. This was released before the MSR, so there is a little... So the door opening and closing access, because you may notice a lot of ships nowadays, or even some older style of ships, have had their internals, lightings and door controls and internal lighting controls updated with the Crusader style system. It just makes sense. The other cool thing about this ship is that it does pass the MFD test. That's basically where you don't have to look down to look at any of your MFDs when flying, which is a big bonus, because if you're not using Track IR or VR, then you have to press the Z key and manually look around your keyboard, which can, in the middle of a high-tense situation, cause you to die, or limit what kind of MFDs you can use in combat to be able to avoid getting shot. Now, in terms of weapons... The ship is not exactly well armed, but it's not really meant to be a fighting ship. It has 3 size 3 Varipuck gimbals and as a result, you have 3 size 2 Badger repeater lasers, which isn't bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. And obviously, as mentioned, you can remove the Varipucks and replace them with size 3. So you could replace them with size 3 Panther repeaters, but it's not the greatest. You do have 8 Strike Force 2 missiles as well, so there is that option. In terms of visuals, though, with the exception of the struts, I actually quite like this visual, mainly as well because you have the ability to look down. Now, I appreciate that not every ship you need to look down when it comes to landing, but if you're new to Star Citizen, or if you're new to sci-fi games in general, having the ability to look down where you're going in first person, in my opinion, I kind of like that as an immersion setting, because it just means that instead of having to sort of just go, oh shit, I've got to now do some stupid stuff in order to get out, or in order to land, I need to go into, I have to just go into third person. I can just look down in game, and I can feel an extra sense of emotion for that one, which is pretty nice. Another interesting note to fact is that when this ship first came out, there was a bit of a hoo-ha about the fact of how similar this vessel looked to the Elite Dangerous ship. I don't know what it is. I've never played Elite Dangerous myself, but there is apparently, I won't lie, there is definitely a bit of a similarity to that, so that's like a ooh dear. But at the same time, there's enough of a different flair that it's not outright exactly the same. And the other sort of interesting note, which, to be honest with you, the price, which is like 70 quid for the standalone, there was basically a sort of comparison of this to say, oh, will this beat the... Like, when this ship initially came out, I also initially thought that the ship could be a challenger to the Avenger Titan, because obviously we all love a bit of drama, we all love a bit of sort of spiciness when it comes to, rivalries. Will this ship be the one to be the rival? But I think the Nomad is, as a starter ship goes, it's not a bad ship, and it certainly does some impressive stuff towards helping a new player enter their journey into the Star Citizen universe. And it's unique enough that if someone who wants to come into the game doesn't want something that looks like a plane, but instead wants something more alien, though to be fair now with the Sulin being introduced, that might be a bit of a problem, it can potentially do some good in terms for like what you want to get out of the game. But at the same time, the price, the lack of an internal cargo bay, which can be problematic if you don't know what you're doing, the lack of a easy to land frame, and finally the cost does make it just probably a bit too much for a new player for the Avenger Titan to be knocked off the best starter ship in the game mantle. So not quite, but almost there. So, a bit of a setting change, but unfortunately due to the showroom editions being quite buggy, I decided to take out all of the big Argo ships and instead showcase them to you inside the hangar bay rather than in the thing. So, a little bit more quiet, a little bit more personal, and a bit more enjoyable to have. So, looking at these fantastic vessels, the first one we're looking at, of course, is the Argo Raft, a dedicated transport vessel. Now, you may notice the similarities between this, the Mole, and the SRV, and I don't know if it is based off the same chassis. English, that would be great. But it is based off the same sort of design metric, and it looks amazing for it. I am a major fan of Argo, as you can probably tell. So whenever I see any sort of brightly lit orange ships, I'm immediately like, Argo? But yes, the Argo raft is the first one we're looking at today, and this particular vessel has a unique way of being a cargo carrier, because unlike every other cargo carrier, which either has its own little gravitational thing that you watch the sort of side of, the hull series, or its own dedicated cargo bay, like in many other cargo transports, this thing has grippers, which then grip onto cargo, like containers, or like various bits of individual, and it has a little crane thing at the top there, which then, of course, in addition with having a tractor beam style technology involved, it'll actually prove it serves as a pretty cool device to help get you sort of in and out of zones with cargo attached in a rather unique way, which is pretty cool. So we're going to hop into this little vessel here. Server is unfortunately taking a bit of a shit today. Unfortunately, the IAE is exacting a harsh toll on all of us, unfortunately. I think if there's any kind of zoom at the moment, the downside of the IAE is that the frames just die sometimes, which is always a bit of a shame. So we'll do what we can, but obviously this thing is the service. This particular server is struggling. So you have two decks to choose from. First one is the lower deck, which menu opens up. There you go. So you have a little bit of a bridge to that one. So very similar internals to the Mole, which you'll be seeing in a few, and it has a very, very nice distinctive bridge. I do love the. Again, I feel like as I'm getting older, my industrialness is coming out, and as a result, I love all of the sort of industrialization, everything kind of getting set up. And if we hop into the power, there we go. As you can see, it passes the MFD test, which is fantastic. And it has a very good visual representation as well. It is pretty awesome. It's a little bit further back in terms of the seat, but again, this is not designed for any kind of thing except for go forwards and try not to hit anything in front of you. So it succeeds in that role rather well, which is always a good thing. It's never a good day when something like that happens. You also have an airlock, so in addition to being able to get out of the ship via the underside, you also do have an airlock, which if we dare press the button, you can see there's like a docking collar which you can get into, which is dope. And of course this ship takes advantage of the Crusader style inventories, and here is the internals, which look beautiful. And has a very nice view at the back now. You can actually see all the way to the back, which is nice. And I love this internal view. Like, it just feels so, yeah, like this thing is designed to be a soft mat thing, but it's not going to be comfortable for long because it's not designed to be comfortable for long. It's just there to serve as a moderate level of comfort, so it's not just sitting on your bare ass on metal. You have a little shower display there. There's two suits, depending on whether or not you're going to a hot or cold planet. And then there's a ladder, which takes you up to the second floor. Now, this particular floor doesn't really serve anything except as a components access, as well as it says use support station, but really what it is meant to say is use crane, because there is, I believe, a crane. There it is. There's the crane system over there. And it basically allows you to use the crane operated system / tractor beam to be able to maneuver the packages into the slots as well. And then, as you can see, you can open up the different sort of slots as well as access the different internals as well. So again, this particular second floor, not really any specific purpose apart from accessing the important shit. But overall, I'd say and do we get... Oh, that's good, yeah. So overall, this ship I do like a lot. It has a lot of potential, and in terms of like obviously taking into various zones, it may not be like a super hardcore dedicated cargo style vessel like for example the Hull C series, which will be able to fly all over the place with a shitload of other stuff. but instead it'll have the ability to get from planet to planet, getting the important cargo through, which I personally find to be a really nice thing. I mean, I'm not a cargo hauler dedicated style thing. I'm more of a mining person per se. But I also can appreciate just the level of awesomeness that this thing has. And this thing, of course, having 96 SCUs worth of cargo, that's something to knock out. That is something to have a that is a respectable amount of SCUs worth, especially for the price, which is like what, 100 and something, like 120, 100 and, like 110, 120. So not a very expensive ship when you look at it. When you, like in terms of like standalone costs, not that bad. I said the main disadvantage, of course, is it's not a traditional cargo bay. So whereas before, when you could just have that as a cargo ship and it worked as the intended goes, sadly now it's a little bit less viable, which is a bit of a shame. Also, random thing to note, but there's been a bunch of graffiti going on at the moment. Don't buy alien. Stop the invasion. And there's another one as well, over here, which is intriguing. Humanity invited, united maybe. So there may be a slight clue into future xenothreat events going on. You never know. You never know. So once again, we are put into the different location due to the lag thing. I might be using I might be using the SRV footage as well for the in here, because it's really laggy, unfortunately. So I do apologize for that, but hopefully this will be still just as good, if not a little bit quieter, and also more functional. So this is the Mole. This thing is my favorite ship in Star Citizen. It looks amazing, first of all. I love the artwork. It's pretty much what it's just the Mole. I love it. It's pretty much what I want in terms of a ship, utility, industrialization, and also just God, words are failing with me today. But it just looks so fucking cool. You've got the different bags, which have all the different parts to it. You've got that industrial blockiness and edge to it. It doesn't have anything that looks refined. It just looks fucking amazing, and I love it. It just has that flair that I am here to do a job, and I don't give a shit what you think. I'm getting this done. And it does get it done, as you not only have size 2 mining lasers, but you have 3 size 2 mining laser turrets. I mean, to be fair, the name actually depicts what this vessel is. Multi-operator laser extractor. Multi-operator laser extractor. It's beautiful. And also, this was the first of the trio to arrive, as you can see by the lack of any buttons that you can press. You're wanting to access into the internals, you have to stand underneath the light. This little pad thing comes down, and you get to see a very nice looking internal bay, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, this opens up, and you get the traditional no interactable console display, which makes me kind of smile, to be honest with you. But yeah, so you're entering into this bay and into this vessel, and as you enter into the bottom area, you actually are the first sort of floor of the ship. You gain access to the suit components and the turret section to the side, which I really like. And how these two different turrets work is they extend outwards. We'll choose the middle one because that one has the most, like, the shiniest bits, and also it more or less all of them work the same way as well, which is important. So rather to save a bit on time, we'll just sort of go to the first turret, and it'll do the same thing. So you go into the living quarters, and it's all very bare bones basic, even more bare bones basic than the raft or the SRV, which we'll be seeing in a second. But you do get some utility. It's a crew of 4. To be fair, you could probably get away with a crew of 3, maybe even a crew of 2 if you are pushing it, though I wouldn't recommend a crew of 2 because one person will have to just be running around like a headless chicken, and if you have something that requires more than what the size 2 mining laser can do, then yeah, that's a bit of a problem. So we'll go into the mining laser to start with, as that one is quite important. Now this one is the kind of the most, like, the only major difference between this and subsequent mining lasers, or the other 2 mining lasers, is this one has a as a slightly snazzier chair, but that's about it. So, when utilizing this facility, you hit the power on at this point. You activate the power by a button on the side here. Ah, there it is. It's a faint button. There we go. But as you can see, on the top left of your screen, which the MFD test passes, you get a 270-degree traverse. Same goes for the other two turrets. Obviously, the left-hand turret is primarily aimed for the left-hand side stuff, and the other turret is aimed for the other side. But this works really well. And as mentioned, this is a dedicated. Also, they finally, well, the screen's a bit smudgy, but it's not as smudgy as it was in the past, which is nice. But as I said, the main advantage of this particular is that, similar to the ROCDS, you can actually have a direct, like, downward viewing position, as well as an overriding view of the mineable. And as a size 2 mining laser, it also is the largest mining lasers currently available in Star Citizen, which is really fantastic. It means that you can go for the big nasty rocks, which unfortunately, as I'm rolling around on my prospector lately, I've been encountering so many rocks that are like 20,000, 18,000, that sort of thing. So they're not quite there yet, but they are actually quite. Oh, there we go, hopping up to the top. So they're not. So in my case, I'm not quite able to get the rocks, which is really frustrating, because, oh my god, it would be so much handy if I could get it. But I know for a fact if I get the if I get the ROC, you know, the size 1 mining laser in a cart, that'll work. No, if I get the mole with its size 2 and the modules and the ability and the gadgets as well, then I have a far greater chance of cracking down on that, which is brilliant. Once again, also, beautiful display. Similar to the Raft, but in my opinion, a much better cockpit display. I think it's because there isn't anything obstructing this left-hand side, so it feels more open and it looks gorgeous. And I love this display. It's fantastic. It's really beautiful. That sounds a bit slightly biased, but I do like the display. I'm a big fan of orange when it comes to UI displays, because orange tends to, like, with the exception of desert regions, orange tends to be easily visible through most things. So unless I'm going specifically on Daymar, where finally this thing has a bit of a problem, I can see on most surfaces this color through everything. And another little handy tip for anyone who is getting into the whole mole mining thing, this acts as a really good not only does this act as a good radar sort of cross-section, but it also gives me the ability to use this as a targeting system for rocks. Because when I've been mining with friends, I've been hovering over rocks, and it's when they go into this little center, when I fly the ship and the rock goes into this little sector here, that's the perfect area for my friends to start mining it, which is a bit weird, but it works, which is a handy little trait there, so happy days for that. And yeah, this particular thing is a brilliant mining vessel, because and also, similar to the Raft, having 96 SEUs worth of cargo has triple the amount of that you would get with a Prospector, which kind of feels like a dig towards MISC, to be fair, but at the same time it is pretty much the same sort of thing for that. But it is a really, really awesome amount of materials you can get, and I know that if I can get something similar to that, Jesus Christ on a bike, I would love one of those things. Seriously. Oh, hello. We're getting a 90s bad action movie camera perspective. There we go. So, yeah, the mole. I love this thing. It is brilliant. And if you're a fan of mining, or if you want to get into mining, currently, this is the end tier. But as mentioned as mentioned in the future, there are, of course, in the future there will be plenty of mining vessels. One of which has been announced at this event, known as the Arabasta, which has recently released a trailer, of which I am very much looking forward to seeing in live action, because it's even bigger than the mole, and it has funkier features, and it has its own refinery. I love you, mole, but you don't have a refinery. I love this ship, don't get me wrong. I want one. I still want one. It's still a perfect between the two, but still, refinery. So, as we enter into the ground floor, we are presented with Consolidated Outlands last release? I want to say it's the last release. I don't want it to be the last release, but well, a latest finger quote release, but I don't want to say that is the case, but I almost fear it is. Because I'm just trying to think if there's any other ship that Consolidated Outland has released, and I don't think it has. It's literally... Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah. This is the Hover Quad. It is a really nice looking... Not going to throw shade on it. It does look really nice. Ground vehicle skimmer, which... I'll be honest with you. I kind of feel bad for saying this, but it's true. It's kind of pointless. Being brutal at this point. The ground vehicle... Well... A ground vehicle such as this, while it is really fun to probably fly around in and you can mess around with your friends or do some like races and whatnot, on a day-to-day average player's level, these vehicles don't really serve any real purpose except to just fuck around with. If there was a system in place that made us require these ground vehicles, then oh, you bet your ass, I'm gonna love these vehicles a lot more, and I'll definitely have some of them in my fleet. But there's almost no reason at this moment in time for me to really get any of these vehicles, nor do I get excited to see them, because I think, like, well, I'm not going to be using you 90% of the time, so maybe 99% of the time is probably a more correct statement, because there's nothing we can do with them. So I don't know. I love the looks. They do look nice, and as a skimmer bike goes, I prefer wheels myself. But at the same time, it, as it says, pretty impressive, looks amazing, but has no real purpose. But I am hoping in the near future for us to be able to get those actually viable reasons to bringing a ground Vic down, rather than just, well, most ground Vics down, other than just I'm driving from my own A to my own B. And as we go from Consolidated Outland to Greycat Industrial, we kind of have the same story for both the PTV and the STV, which you could say is probably not the most appropriately named, considering it could stand for sexually transmitted virus. But you know what? We'll just pretend we didn't realize that. So this, of course, is the PTV. It's pretty much a golf buggy. I remember when I started playing Star Citizen for real, this was the vehicle that I got into the first time ever in a... Like, this was the first moving vehicle I got into, because in the Area 18 zone, there were a couple of these just lying around, and myself and another player were just fucked around with these things, which was a little bit hilarious. And of course, these vehicles kind of come into its own meme, as they is now kind of a unit of measurement, which I find hilarious. Like, some YouTubers, I think one YouTuber in particular, Law of the West, whenever he was talking about new ships being released, in addition to talking about the SCU's worth of cargo, he would actually get as many PTVs as he could safely store inside the cargo bay, and to help describe the size. So it would be like, oh, this ship has 635 SCU's worth of cargo, which obviously, unless you're like super hardcore, or unless you are that invested in Star Citizen, you don't really feel like you can appreciate the value. But if you say, oh, it's enough for 70 PTVs, then you go, shit, that's a lot of space. So yeah, I love it. And also, to be fair as well, CIG have incorporated these vehicles into a racing circuit on Horizon, and I do believe they're also doing it for Area 18. We just need Microtech's one, and we'll be all sorted. Not to mention, of course, there are some wild tracks outside. So it's a lot of fun. I love these little things, and if you're a fan of Star Citizen and you want to have if you want to fuck around, this is the ship to do it in and have a laugh at the same time. The STV is new to me. It was released, I can't remember, to be honest with you. It was not really that much of a big thing. I think it was more just like a little tiny thing, which, to be fair, that's what exactly is inside this vehicle. I mean, it looks just like a normal, like a tourist truck / car, and I should get into it, because I've not actually gotten into one before. Let's have a look. Okay. Looks pretty cool. Very utilitarian. Drives... Oh, that's cool. See how much this... Okay, yeah. Oh, nice! Interactable keyboard. I was going to say, where the hell's the airbag in these things? Probably in here. Okay. I mean, in terms of visuals, it's pretty nice, and I'm sure it'll be quite a quick vehicle. But as civilian transport goes, yeah, I like it. Aesthetically speaking, I like it. It looks pretty dope. But, again, it doesn't serve any real purpose. And unfortunately, the showroom edition is slightly bugged. But, like, again, similar to the PTV and similar to the hoverbikes, it doesn't really have a purpose being here, and it doesn't really serve any purpose. So it kind of feels a bit like a waste, not a waste of time, but you know, it doesn't serve any real purpose in a day-to-day player style. So I feel like if you get one, it's just not really going to do much inside your hangar until then when they do implement it. But I mean, feel free to correct me. I would love to be wrong. Don't get me wrong. I want there to be a reason to do this outside of like events or org v org events or anything. I would love for the game to be like, right, I need you to drive into this cave. Your ship's too big, so you need to get into one of the ground vehicles you can get your hands on, and then you can drive into this cave. That would be cool. But until then, all I'll say is it looks nice. It probably will be handled nice, but I have no reason to get one. Going from vehicles that sadly don't have much use at the moment to vehicles that do have use and will continue to have many use, this is, of course, the ROC, and this is the ROC-DS. Now, the ROC is a ground mining vehicle, the first of its kind in Star Citizen, and has been a sturdy companion for any miners, fans, or nudist mining Star Citizen players out there. Because it is quite a nice little ship to go through. A lot of players now probably go towards the Prospector, but there are also options for utilizing this as well, and I will say it is a very useful vehicle. It has a size 1 mining laser, not as big as the Prospector's one, of course, but it does give you the ability to mine the smaller diamond-sized, diamond icon-sized minables far more efficiently, giving you that extra edge. And it also comes with an extractor, so you can not only can you fracture the rock, but you can also scroop up a lot of them as well, giving you far more time rather than having to sort of go and pick up you and pick up you and pick up you. No, you didn't pick up you, and oh, for fuck's sake, pick up you. You know, that kind of thing. It's so much more efficient in that regard. It has 80 SCUs worth, CSCUs worth of cargo to store into it as well, and it has and it also is quite nifty, quite quick and mobile. Nifty? No, speedy. Speedy is probably the more appropriate word. But yes, it is quite an agile vehicle, and it is very useful to anyone wanting to get into the mining game without too much hassle. Only problem. It and I have a bit of a checkered history. When this vehicle first came out, there were a fair few problems with it, and there's still a couple of outlying issues with it as well, but we'll get on to the stuff that has been fixed since then. The first thing is the fact that the vehicle was very top-heavy. Now, it still is kind of top-heavy, in the sense that the vehicle has only 4 wheels, and if you go nuts around a corner, there is a chance you can flip the vehicle. So obviously do take care when traveling over arduous terrain like a rock or anything like that, because you know that's just probably not a good idea. Just saying. But at the same time, it was a lot worse when this vehicle first came out. I think since the CIG have updated the game, when it comes to ground Vix, they've added some weight to it. They've given it some sort of they've given it the much needed weight that it has in order to ensure it's going to be functioning fully as it should be, rather than rather than other crap as well. Which, yeah, it was a lot worse. The other thing, of course, is that back then, if you flipped the vehicle, you were kind of fucked unless you had a friend of yours to push you over, because there was no tractor beam technology. So nowadays, you might be more lucky, because obviously if you've got a tractor beam on you, you at least can potentially grab a wheel, drag the vehicle over, and you're sorted. Or if you have that new big version, then you can also do that as well. But again, it's very much a case of you have to be very... but then again, your vehicle could potentially... but you still, depending on where you flip over, it's still a bit... it was a bit arduous. But again, this vehicle is... back then, it wasn't so much the case. Of course, the other thing, which is a bit of a problem, is Due to the nature of the wheels themselves, as you can see, they're on a bit of a stilts and everything. If you went over certain arduous terrain, it's like if we bumped into that rock, you could flip the vehicle. Oh god, it was, yeah. I did not have a great time with this vehicle at first, but once I got into it, it was fine. Driving around is a little bit less difficult than it used to be. Obviously, much more less difficult than it used to be, but it's still something you have to keep an eye out for. When you were mining, it had a tendency, and another thing they've fixed, is when you were mining, it had a tendency to sort of drift to the left or drift to the right, and you'd have to steer and position the vehicle in a certain way to try and counter the push that you're getting from using the mining laser. So that was fun. So you had to spend some time working with that, which is annoying, to say the least, and it meant that you couldn't really do much if you were in a bit of a shitty location when it came to mining, which is problematic. Going to the issues that are still prevalent and are well, I wouldn't exactly say are design factors, but they are an issue that you will face when driving this thing. The first is the fact that you are in a open environment, which means you are not self-sealed, you're not contained, you are exposed. And depending on what kind of armor you wear, not everyone wears heavy armor. Some people wear the medium or the thin armor because they want to look cool, and that's completely fine, except when you're on a frozen planet or a lava-style planet. You kind of need something to protect yourself, otherwise you're more likely to die from exposure than anything else, which is not really that good. The other issue, of course, is that your field of traverse is limited by what you can actually see. And obviously, if your vision gets blocked by the strut or by the window or anything like that, it can be problematic, resulting in you spending less time mining and more time having to fix things, which is less great, but hey-ho. And, of course, the mining laser up to the top right. This thing is yet to be fixed and is considered a bug, but if you basically get out of the ROC when either disembarking onto the field or disembarking onto your Cutlass Black, which was often advertised as something to get alongside the ROC, this thing would shoot 90 degrees straight up into the roof and clip into the roof of your Cutlass Black, doing quite a fair amount of damage to it and to the vehicle as well, potentially costing you potentially causing the vehicle to either be permanently damaged, resulting in you having to get the thing fixed up, or you had to well, you might lose the mining laser may no longer work and you just had to chalk it up, or you just have a damaged Cutlass Black. Either way, not a fun experience to have, and something that you do need to take care on when utilizing it. I will say I'm currently in the process of driving this thing around and experiencing what it's like with the ROC years after launch, and I can say it is a lot better than it used to be, but it still has a few niggle issues here or there, which I'm looking forward to seeing the other vehicle, the ROC DS, fix and potentially be greater than. So the ROC DS is obviously an upgrade / improvement to the ROC design. It has an additional set of wheels, it has a larger carrying capacity, and it has 2 seats, unlike the first one, resulting in with the first one being a self-sealed unit. Same heads-up display as before and all that jazz. But again, self-sealed, unlike the other vehicle where it's open and exposed, meaning that you can spend far more time and be vastly more independent than the ROC. So what makes the ROC DS, I mean, I said you've got wheels and of course larger carrying capacity, but what is the other distinctive advantage that you have over the ROC, which is the mining laser apparatus? If we hop into the seat here, and then watch as it takes us into, and whee, and there you go. So as you can see, the big upgrade, like the big upgrade in comparison. Nice. Oh, I don't think we're supposed to get this to work. Oh my god, it's actually working. Oh my god, it's actually working. Oh shit. The safety's not on. The safety's not on. Oops. I could torch a vehicle. I can't quite. Oh, hang on. Let me just see if I can do this. But yeah, as you can see, the main advantage of the ROC DS is you have full traversal in comparison to other elements, you can traverse up to, I want to say, 180 degrees to, 180 degree traversal. You can go up, you can go down, and you have an overhead experience. Just gonna fuck with some new players here. But yeah, so ooh, that's bad. I didn't realize you could do that. GG. Sorry, that just made me laugh. So yes, the ROC DS has the ability for you to overhang over some rocks, and of course has a longer range than the ROC, giving it that extra sort of flair. I'm going to get off this thing and try and get out of the way before someone else notices that you can do that. I'm just going to see a player just sort of minding his own business, and then he sees I can use the laser, and it'll be like, any new player who comes through here will be Swiss cheesed. But yes, the ROC DS, I have to admit, I have not driven in many years, but I will be doing so once I've driven the ROC extensively, and I'm going to be trying to do a sort of a comparison between the two. But the ROC DS got a bit of flack when it first came out, because a lot of players were sort of saying either A, the vehicle is kind of pointless, because if you have two players, then one player is going to be inside the vehicle enjoying a nice little drive, while the other player freezes to death or burns to death on the outside. Also, it doesn't seem to be quite a lot of fun for one player just to be sat in a mining laser, simply waiting for the person to drive up to a point that doesn't even benefit him in the end run, which, okay, fair enough. Yes, it can be boring. Yes, it's a bit laborious, but let's do one thing that, can hopefully deconstruct that entire argument, which is remove the second person and simply make this thing the dedicated mining platform that it is. You drive up to a location, you find the adequate amount of stuff, you find the adequate amount of minables, you then get out of the vehicle, hop into the, now that you've come from your nice, safe, contained environment to now the open and exposed elements, so even if you can only be out for like 10-20 minutes at most, you can at least drive around a lot, and also have your oxygen supplied to you. Then finally you can use this thing with a much longer range, with a much better, more accurate method of mining, and you have more cargo capacity to work with. This has 350 CSUs worth of cargo versus the, of course, 80 there. So overall, this particular machine just operates far more effectively, far more efficiently, and is also easier to work with than the ROC. However, I will say that I won't make a final sort of judgment call, if you will, until such times as I've gone through both that ROC DS and, of course, the ROC, because I do want to actively, I want this vehicle to have itself in the limelight. I want it to be in a good light, not people just shitting on it because one person said on YouTube it was bad. I want to defend this thing. So, as we make our way to the last room on this day, which is a bit sad, but I feel confident nonetheless that I will say this has been a start again because I can't talk properly. Oh, for fuck's sake, just stay there, you... As we make our way towards the holodeck, I am sad to see this day come and go so quickly, but never fear, for we have a very lovely image of the Pioneer, which looks very pleasant. Ooh, looks nice. So, as you can see, this is the Consolidated Outlands Pioneer. So, what exactly is this ship? It is a dedicated... Is that a turret? That is a turret, GG. The Pioneer is a engineering vessel. It basically allows prefabricated structures to be made, or it assists in the process of making prefabricated structures. It actually started life out as a sort of a ship. It was a ship that previously could be made, which previously would turn into a building / early colonial starting sector, but instead, as the evolution of the design evolved, you can tell I'm running out of words. My thesaurus is low. As the progression of the ships evolved, this ship went from being a base building to having to build the base building, thus allowing players to be a more engineering side of things. And to be fair, I am very keen on this ship coming out. There's a lot of things about this style of ship that I am very intrigued by, and as I'm leaning as time goes by, as I get a bit older, I'm leaning more and more into industrialization and also the wonders that it may contain as a result. And I definitely feel like this ship is the kind of ship I want to get at some point because it feels right. You know what I mean? Like, there's a ship that you see in Star Citizen that you go, that's me. This is what I am. I love doing this. And the Pioneer is looking like the kind of ship that fits the role for me especially. I also love the details as well. Now, this is probably not going to be around for some time, but I do hope to see this in somewhat the near future. I'd like to say the next couple of years. You know, just the next couple of years. Because, yeah, just a little bit of optimism flying through my face. But anyway, alas, this is the day done, unfortunately. But do not fear, for we have another day inbound. Of course, that is Anvil. Yes, all about the metal smashing onto metal, as well as ships from the Anvil Aeronautics. Aeronautics? No, Aerospace, not Aeronautics. That's Argo. That's Argo. Aeronautics is Argo. Oh, cool. The moment that an NPC and a player come down the stairs and you can't tell the difference. Immersion. So yes, I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video. And also, do let me know what you think about the ships I talk about and all of the, you know, whether or not you agree with my opinions, whether or not you sort of think there is some merit to it, whether there's not some merit to it, all of that jazz. Would love to hear your thoughts down below. And also, if you are curious as to how I know so much, or at least I would like to say I've just through time playing Star Citizen, I know everything. But really, it's more thanks to the Urkul website, which is linked down below in the description. It's basically known as the DPS calculator, or Urkul. And basically what you can do is you can go onto the website. If you have a particular ship that you want to sort of customize or add on or remove weapons to, it'll give you all the stats for each and every weapon that you can mount onto it, as well as give you sort of stats to track, so that way you can then make the most ultimate build fighter of your choice. It's like World of Tanks, only fun. So anyway, I'll catch you guys in Anvil Day. Oh god, that's going to be a while. That's going to be a long video. Anyway, I'll see you then.